evening. My name is Sean O'Brien, and tonight I'm going to talk to you about something you probably don't hear about very often, the value of space. I'm going to start with talking about how it's used in creative fields, and then more generally. So here's one of my favorite performers, who goes by the name of St. Vincent, and this quote really rings true to me. I feel like the space between the notes is like the glue that holds a song together. And of course, it's an important creative element that is used to offset the notes and and there's some silence and some space. So the next thing is a completely different area. It's architecture. So an architect literally defines space. And while the building may perform a certain function, like keeping the rain out or keeping the bad weather out, the primary focus of a building is the space. That's where the utility happens. And that's what the building's there for. It's for the function that happens inside. So it's not just the structure and the space inside, but the distance and the offset between the elements of space and the elements of substance in a building. Space isn't just empty, but it can also be a characteristic of an element. So, for example, these walls are empty. They're an element of space that can be used. Totally different area. Here's an M.C. Escher painting, or rather a woodcut. If you've taken art, and even a beginning art class, you're probably aware of negative space and how negative space can define positive space or define the subject that you're trying to present. Now, Escher did something pretty interesting here, and he turned the negative space into the subject and vice versa. Another guy did a similar thing, a more current artist, but he actually created a space invader out of space. Yeah. So I think this is really important to kind of focus on the idea that space can be an object to be considered just as much as any other particular thing you're focusing on. So consider that. Consider how space might look in your life. What does that mean to you in everyday life? The most obvious thing to consider is space in like the physical environment. Is your environment that you have control over, is it cluttered or is it open and available to you? Because I walk into a lot of people's houses and there's just stuff everywhere, just collecting, and I don't know how healthy that is. So the idea of space being important and having value is pretty old. This quote is from the Tao Te Ching. It's 2,500 years old. And if this idea of space being important kind of resonates with you, I recommend looking into Eastern philosophy like Taoism, Buddhism, and there's a number of other smaller ideas, but space and emptiness, these ideas are pretty central. This guy was, he had a small interest in Zen Buddhism, and by deciding what not to do, he was able to allow Apple to focus on some select projects that have been tremendously successful. So I'd like you to consider what you're deciding not to do, or what you could decide not to do in order to create more success and space in your life for creativity to happen. The yin-yang symbol, I think, represents these ideas pretty well, because you've got the idea of substance and emptiness intertwined and defining one another. So just like an architect creates the building that defines the space, and the space defines the building as well, and just as the musician uses space to offset the notes. Thanks for your time. I hope I've caused you to think about space in a little bit different way than